This video is sponsored by Crimson Manifesto, Knuckles OX, and Baba Snake. In the wake of Piccolo's proclamation, the trio of heroes consider the best form of training for what they hope to achieve, with the mysterious mirror suggesting that perhaps instead of training together, as they had been doing, they each seek out a new master or guide to help them improve on their own abilities. Specifically, Ultra Instinct for Goku, Ultra Ego for Vegeta, and Dragon Warrior mode for Piccolo. In fact, in Goku's case, Mirrors himself will be happy to serve as his instructor, as he has some knowledge of the transformation. Naturally, this only furthers Piccolo's suspicions about this man, as with his inextricable movement speed, preternatural ki sense which surpasses even his own, and of course the bluish skin and white hair, it doesn't take a genius to conclude that he is either an angel, or at least in some way connected to the godly attendants. Though when Goku eagerly agrees to go with him, Piccolo raises no objection. As for Vegeta, he declares that he will contact Whis and travel to Universe 11 to train with Toppo, since he's the only other mortal he knows of who shares this power, and considering he possessed Ultra Ego for longer, he will be an ideal mentor, even if it does mean putting up with his eccentricities. This grimace from the prince helps to lighten the mood slightly, though Piccolo is still in a contemplative mood, as not only is he in mourning for his student and ancestral homeworld, but as far as he is aware, the Dragon Warrior form is exclusive to him, so how is he supposed to find a master for that? As if reading his mind, Mirrors once more speaks up, suggesting that perhaps he could ask Zuno, as he is supposedly all-knowing, so if anyone can counsel him, it would be him. Grateful to at least have a means by which he can be proactive rather than wallowing, Piccolo takes this advice, thanking the patrolman and preparing to kai away, while in turn, Goku and Vegeta prepare to set out on their individual journeys, with all three wishing each other luck, and promising to meet up on Earth when their training is complete. Speaking of Earth, following a conversation with King Kai, in which he informs them of Boo's passing and the plan for the main trio to go on training trips, the Vampa crew returns to the Blue World, so that they may stand as its first line of defense until Piccolo and the Saiyans get back. However, knowing that they can't do it alone, they quickly set about recruiting all their Earthling allies, since if what King Kai told them is true, then Moro now has an army comprised of the galaxy's worst scum backing him up, including a terrifying android by the name of OG-73, who is perhaps just as dangerous as the wizard himself. Back with Piccolo, he has at last received an audience with Zuno, though after giving the alien intelligence broker a kiss in exchange for his services, he quickly comes to realize that one thing this all-knowing being doesn't know how to do is give a straight answer, as when asked who he should train with to improve his Dragon Warrior form, he is met with a question in turn: where do dragons sleep? Still distressed and feeling as though time is running out, Piccolo tersely answers that he doesn't know. The clouds? Though tutting slightly, Zuno rebukes this as a silly answer, since he lives above the clouds, yet he has never seen Shinron napping in the shadow of the lookout, has he? Definitely ticked off now. Piccolo snaps back that of course not, because he's only present when he's summoned. Though rather than be offended by this rudeness, Zuno nods his large head ever so slightly. Where does he sleep when not summoned? Furrowing his bald brow, Piccolo admits that he never actually thought about it, though he supposes inside the Dragon Balls, with Zuno chuckling that those are awfully small lodgings for such a large dragon, are they not? Nodding along now too, as he is at last beginning to understand what the information broker is getting at, and that he has been asking the wrong question, so the Namekian hero instead queries if there is a realm where Shinron resides similar to the hyperbolic time chamber. Definitely grinning now, Zuno plainly answers that there is, and wants to keep the ball rolling. Piccolo says that this is where he will find his master, among fellow dragons. Nodding once more, Zuno utters one last word: Zalama. Then with a wave of his hand, he gestures for Piccolo to leave, as he has other petitioners to deal with. In spite of how infuriating the man was at first, Piccolo bows gratefully as he departs, determined to follow this dragon road to the end, for Boo, Nail, and everyone else who has been lost. Returning to the lookout, our Namekian hero is now faced with the problem: how does he get to this dragon realm? Looking at it logically, the best method would be the Dragon Balls, since that is an entry and exit point that he knows works. The only problem is that the Earth has not had its own set of Dragon Balls for a very long time. Were he an experienced Dragon Clan member, this would not be an issue, as he could simply manifest more. Though as a warrior Namekian, this is a skill presumably beyond him. Even the Boo Ball surpass what he can do, with this thought causing a wave of melancholy to wash over him, as it feels as though by lacking their gifts, he is failing both his master and his student. However, as if the spirits of these two departed loved ones are reaching out to him to help him one last time, he has an idea, a long shot, but one which may work. Gathering up the Boo Balls, he begins to infuse them with the sort of godly energy he acquired upon becoming Guardian. And while at first this does nothing, slowly they begin to harden into jewels and take on an off-orange color. Recognizing that this is working, Piccolo pushes just a little bit harder, careful not to burst the orbs, as in the center of them, something begins to glow, a series of faint red sparks, which slowly but surely adopt the appearance of stars, signifying these as Dragon Balls. Admittedly, they are rather mediocre when compared to Kami's Dragon Balls, or the grand orbs of Planet Namek, being less balls and more wads of dried out bubblegum, with Piccolo suspecting that they might only be good for a single wish before cracking due to how brittle they appear. However, even this small miracle should mean that in some way, they must be connected to the Dragon Realm, which is all he needs right now. Standing before the balls, the Namekian hero focuses his attention on them, doing all he can to find an opening, anything he can use to kai inside them. When this yields nothing, he begins to feel silly, and so instead takes to glaring at them, as if trying to intimidate them into revealing their secrets to him. Strangely enough, this is easiest with the 1 and 2 star balls, since if he squints, they almost look like a pair of glowing orange eyes with red pupils, an opinion echoed by the rumbling voice of Shinron, as he states that they truly are a marvel. Jumping slightly from the shock, Piccolo looks around, with it coming as a startling surprise that he is no longer on the lookout. In fact, he isn't on Earth, or perhaps even in his universe anymore, as this place is unlike anywhere he has ever seen. From a glance, he can only assume that this is Dragon Realm, a fact made probable as he turns his head skywards to meet the eyes of Shinron himself, who thanks to not manifesting through the ball, seems to stretch on endlessly into the horizon. Bowing his giant head, the eternal dragon greets his master happily and humbly, since it's been so long since he's been summoned outside of the Shadow Dragon technique, without the need for Piccolo to act as his medium in place of the Dragon Balls, asking why it is he has come to the dragon's domain, with Piccolo responding that he is seeking someone named Zalama. At this, Shinron grows very quiet, as a sense of reverence far greater than he feels for even the Guardian begins to radiate off him, with him stating that his lord seeks the Shepherd of Dragons. Nodding that this sounds about right, Piccolo asks Shinron if he can take him to the Shepherd, with the green dragon growing immensely nervous now, as he replies that few are permitted to meet the progenitor and lord of this plane, so while he can bring Lord Kami to Lord Zalama, he cannot ensure that he will grant the Namekian an audience, even if he is now part dragon himself. Reaching up, Piccolo is pleasantly surprised to feel the familiar antlers of his dragon warrior form, though in truth, he should not be, since that this is where he draws the power for the form from. It only stands to reason that it would manifest while he is submerged in his energy. All the same, he requests that Shinron take him to Zalama, since he must at least try to receive his tutelage, with the eternal dragon dutifully dipping his large head so that Piccolo can climb onto his forehead. Sitting in a comfortable meditative position, Piccolo watches with awe as they begin heading deeper into this realm, as it quickly becomes apparent that Shinron is not its sole inhabitant, as on top of familiar faces like Purunga, he quickly notices countless other dragons of various sizes and strength, forcing him to reflect on the inconceivably massive amount of wonders and terrors they could all bring about. Finally, after what feels like hours, or perhaps moments, time is difficult to gauge in this place, Shinron begins to circle a large clearing. Curiously, Piccolo asks if this is where Zalama is, since to him, it appears empty, though in the giant dragon realm was his ascent. The Namekian hero thanks him for his assistance, and asks him to put him down. Clamoring off of Shinron's, the green dragon flies away perhaps a bit too eagerly. Piccolo then calls out for Zalama, using the honorific lord as Shinron had, as he beseeches him to be his mentor, as he wished to hone his dragon warrior form to protect his world. For a moment, he receives no response. Then, from everywhere and nowhere, a voice of purest majesty answers. Looking around for the source now, Piccolo next requests that this being, if they are indeed Zalama, reveal himself, though tutting with enough force to shake the ground below Piccolo. Zalama answers that he is not hiding. The young Dragon Link's mind is simply not equipped to perceive him. There is an air of patronization to this statement that Piccolo doesn't like, and so looking to prove his worth, he marshals all his mental fortitude and training, with this at least allowing him to see something. At first, the figure is hazy, though second by second, it becomes clearer, taking on the form of the 1 and 2 star Dragon Ball side by side, while below them hangs a grinning mouth that chortles and chuckles. That this is very amusing indeed. However, as it speaks, it changes, going from a disembodied face into a vast golden dragon whose scales each appear to be the size of houses. Then, just as quickly, it is a young Namekian child with a sagely white beard. On and on, these rapid shifts in appearances go, with it changing every time Piccolo starts to think he has a handle on what Zalama looks like. All the while, the shepherd laughs, musing that while any perception from a mortal is mightily impressive, it is still not enough, since if he cannot even nail down what he looks like, how can he study under him? Angrily, Piccolo retorts that he will study under him, because he must. He alone is the Earth's guardian. He alone is the Dragon Warrior. However, this just makes Zalama howl with laughter, as he muses that Piccolo doesn't know how right he is about that, before muttering something about a ridiculous orange. Not that he's opposed to ridiculousness per se. As someone who is opposed to ridiculousness, Piccolo feels a vein pulsing in his forehead, though this might just be from the strain of keeping Zalama in view. But all the same, he does not lessen his focus, instead taking his meditative position once again and vowing to keep trying until he is able to perceive the shepherd's true form. Back on Earth, 2 months have passed, during which time Gohan, Broly, and the others have been hard at work training on planet Yardrat. Since while Moro's crew had arrived on Earth not long after Piccolo vanished, Jocko had been able to convince the villains to give them this extra time, with the promise that it would result in a more enticing meal for Moro when he consumed their ki. As a slave to his gluttony, Moro had agreed to these terms, though now their time is up, and with Goku, Vegeta, and Piccolo all still missing in action, it is up to the Earth team to defend the world. While Broly has suggested they use the new makeshift Dragon Balls to bolster their numbers by returning people like Boo and Nail to life, Gohan had forbidden this, since Piccolo had clearly needed the balls assembled for something when he left, and besides that, they seemed a bit off, so for safety's sake, it's best that they not be tampered with until the Guardians return, just in case. Thankfully, even without their heaviest hitters, the Earthlings are far from defenseless, as Broly has made great strides to control his rage thanks to his Yardratian training. Goten and Trunks have become even more proficient as Gotenks, to the point where they believe that through a combination of spirit control, cloning, and fission, they might be able to manifest a shade of him to fight alongside them without fusing, kinda like what they've heard Piccolo and Buu could do. And most importantly, Gohan has risen up to take the mantle of leadership in his dad and uncle's absence, with this bolstering the spirits of the remaining Z fighters like Krillin to do their parts as well, no matter how small. First and foremost, Gohan has truly become a master of spirit control, putting all he's learned about controlling his own rages to good use, as it requires a similar principle of calming one's spirit. Though that is not all, with him having also discovered a gift from Buu as if from beyond the grave, that being the dance the Jin did for him after he helped collect the Buu balls the first time. Well, at the time, he had thought it was just his adoptive cousin prancing around merely. Now he knows that it was actually a ritual inherited from the Grand Supreme Kai, which unlocked the entirety of his latent potential, albeit at a slightly delayed rate, thanks to it being an imperfect recreation of the technique, though the results are still quite potent, with Gohan even contemplating a way to spread this gift to their other allies. All the same, as Gohan stands at the head of the Z-Fighter party assembled to receive Moro and his goons, a powerful white aura surrounds him, while his hair and even face take on a sharper, more angular appearance. Unfortunately, Gohan's first opponent doesn't care, that being the infamous android OG-73, as when Moro's ship enters the atmosphere, he descends with brutal efficiency to trade blows at the half-Saiyan, as the opening salvo of this conflict. A moment later, the other prisoners such as Saganbo, Yuzun, and Misa's gang descend to join them, with Broly squaring off against Saganbo, Krillin getting Yuzun, and Goten and Trunks once more fighting a team of women who confuse. Though unlike Kefla, when they see this amalgamation, they feel no desire to impress her. As for Gohan and 7-3, they are evenly matched, as by employing that initial clash, the robotic criminal was able to copy Gohan's abilities, meaning despite all the young hybrid's recent achievements, his enemy can simply mirror them, turning the match into a stalemate. Thankfully, Gohan is not alone, as one by one, his allies begin picking off their own opponents, with the Gotenk Shade being the first to score a win, as he fights alongside the real Goten and Trunks, while a moment later, Broly obliterates the vice captain of Moro's pirate band, freeing him up to help Gohan. Even Krillin takes out the Zarbon wannabe, with a bit of help from Tien and Yamcha, meaning soon it is the entire Earth team against 7-3. Thanks to their experience with the Tournament of Power, teamwork is still fresh in their minds, with this allowing them to cumulatively get the upper hand. In an attempt to mitigate this, 7-3 next scans Broly, though as he will soon learn, all that power comes from an erratic nature, and not having paid the price to control it like Broly has. The android quickly grows volatile and sloppy, allowing the coordinated fights to pick him off, until he is little more than scrap. However, refusing to let his most valuable fighter go to waste, due to the force opposing him being so much stronger and better prepared than what he'd face in canon, Moro at last descends to the battlefield himself, absorbing 7-3, and becoming a lethal cyborg who reminds the heroes a bit too much of Cell for comfort. Unfortunately, just like Cell, this new Moro 7-3's combat power is overwhelming, and when coupled with his magic, it takes very little time before he has the Earth's defenders broken at his feet, though he does not kill them, instead asking one all-important question: where are those 3 delicious fighters who make up his main course? Where is the last Namekian morsel he was so rudely denied? Where is Piccolo? Returning to their erstwhile guardian, he is still hard at work trying to perceive Zalama, and while he has not yet secured a concrete form, he has slowed his shifting and caused him to flicker between a small roster of appearances. Just that feat alone has been both physically and mentally exhausting, to the point where Piccolo has at times wondered whether his soul will be able to reach Otherworld if he dies from the strain. Not that he has any intentions of doing so when his world and friends need him, with that being what sustains the Namekian war throughout this maddening trial. As this has been happening, Zalama has watched on curiously, though watched may not be the word so much as perceived, since Piccolo has learned one thing about the Dragon God. It is that he is so much more than meets the eye, that it's only natural a mortal would have trouble to comprehend. In fact, it has come as a stark reminder that even though he has a place in the hierarchy of gods, he is still but a speck in the grand chaotic river of the cosmos, a fact which Piccolo suspects pleases Zalama, that something beyond qualification seems to change in his energy when Piccolo realizes this. Not only that, but it serves as confirmation that he can indeed perceive and sense Zalama's energy at least, with this being a good starting point, as if he can create the picture of that, as he has when facing a new enemy. Perhaps the rest will fill in within that framework. Finding this a novel way of approaching the task, Zalama asks why exactly the young Dragonling has decided to approach this like a fight. Does he consider them to be enemies? However, with no hint of enmity or disrespect, Piccolo replies that Lord Zalama is not his enemy, though to him, this is indeed a fight against his own weakness and limits, since it was because of him that people he cared about died. So now he must defeat those flaws, so that he may become the person his other friends and the universe need him to be. As he says says this, a new form of Zalama enters the rotation, that of Piccolo himself, though far more sinister, greatly resembling King Piccolo, almost as if the shepherd is both mocking this rigid attitude and reminding him that his attention is slipping, though rather than be angered by this, Piccolo is grateful, redoubling his focus, specifically on trying to get a read on the full extent of Zalama's energy. Like the god himself, this is almost inconceivably vast, rushing over Piccolo like a raging tide. Though having accepted his insignificance, he does not attempt to fight the current, instead allowing it to flow over him, carrying him to the edges and then sucking him back to the center, with this providing a fascinating insight into Zalama, as by traveling along this current, he at last has what could almost be called an outline. Now all that's left is to fill it in, though to do so will take more willpower than he has ever exerted before, and perhaps more costly, it will require time. Back on Earth, Moro has Gohan by the throat, hissing that he will not ask again, tell him where the Guardian is, or perish alongside this world, since such a calamity will surely call him home, as it did on Namek. However, showing a bit of his uncle's gruffness, the half-Saiyan hero tells the wizard to go to hell, since he doesn't know where Piccolo is, so even if he did, he wouldn't tell him. At these words of defiance, a new voice calls his encouragement, and turning his gaze skyward, Moro spots Goku, while floating at his side are Mirrors and Vegeta, the latter of whom now wears the uniform of the Pride Troopers, and a peculiar earring. In a scornful voice, the prince then jeers that while Piccolo isn't here, he's sure that he and Kakarot can provide ample entertainment, a claim Goku nods his agreement with, as the two Saiyans descend to the ground. At the sight of their champion's return, the beaten Z fighters cry the relief, while Gohan, Goten, and Trunks welcome their dads back, excitedly asking if they got stronger thanks to their training. Grinning confidently, Goku assures the boys that they sure did, though the question they next pose to Vegeta is far less flattering, with them asking if he had to take part in the Pride Troopers poses. Though here there is some discord, as the sons of Goku call them awesome poses, while Trunks calls them stupid poses. Not dignifying this with a response, Vegeta instead steps forward to show off the fruits of his training, as he flashes effortlessly into Ultra Ego, and takes the first crack at Moro. Having drained this loudmouth once before, the goat is not afraid. That is until the prince's fist connects with his face, shattering his jaw and adding a certain sloshing to his speech. Evidently, this last point was very intentional, as Vegeta taunts that there won't be any more sorcery from the Goat Man today. No, they'll settle this like warriors. From the sideline, Goku calls this kinda unfair, considering he's overly dependent on that magic of his, and an older geezer than Master Roshi in reality, suggesting maybe he should give Moro a senzu bean to fix his jaw, since he wants to fight the wizard with everything he has. Though this is promptly shouted down by everyone, most of all Mirrors. Pouting a little at this, Goku tells Vegeta to tag out with him then, since he obviously can already beat the spellcaster without much effort. Though growling fiercely, the prince yells back that he just started punishing him for Namek, so stop being so selfish and wait. However, in looking away, Vegeta gives Moro just the opening he needs to grab him and exhibit the power he gained from 7-3, his head gem quickly acquiring an image of Vegeta, as he brays that this is incredible, the power of a nigh-perfected destroyer candidate at his fingertips. Not to mention, thanks to this form growing with damage, that strike to his jaw has made him even stronger than Vegeta himself. So thank you for that, lad. Unfortunately, this is not just talk, as lashing out with the Destroyer Key and powered back fist, Moro is able to send Vegeta crashing into the ground. And while he is able to get back up due to sharing the same properties, Goku has already used this opportunity to jump in, with Vegeta calling him a greedy worm, as he rejoins the fight as well, refusing to give up his prey. Testily, Goku retorts that Vegeta would have done the same if their roles were reversed, all the while demonstrating the true mastery of Ultra Instinct he has acquired through training with Mirrors, by reflexively dodging each attempt Moro makes to grab at him, and thus add the power of angels as well as destroyers to his kit. Nonetheless, even while bickering, Goku and Vegeta do prove an effective pair, as while Goku keeps Moro occupied through evasive hit and run techniques, Vegeta is able to surprise him with more decisive blows, his first target being the crystals on the sorcerer's head, since with them gone, Moro cannot mimic powers, meaning he must only use his own abilities, and those gained by merging with 7-3. Admittedly, these are considerable, far greater than what the Saiyans could have withstood before their training, though after the rigors they underwent, they are able to turn the battle in their favor. Likewise, back in the Dragon's domain, Piccolo has had a similar breakthrough, as after much effort, he has at last confined Zalama to a singular form. A grand dragon made of stars, whose body seems to encompass the entirety of the universe. Or is that a multiverse? It is a fitting form, and as he looks up at the now finite form of Zalama, Piccolo asks if they can begin their training. Though with an amiable laugh, the dragon god replies that on the contrary, his training is complete. He managed to create a solid form where none exists through sheer force of will, which is the essence of creation energy, and more importantly, the heart of a wish dragon's power. Perhaps Piccolo cannot feel it here where the energy of creation is so abundant, but take his word for it, once he returns to the mortal plane, he will find his abilities have grown exponentially. Not only that, but he very well may discover a deeper bond with his draconic kin, which will allow him to, now on second thought, he won't ruin that surprise. Choosing not to question this, Piccolo instead asks his final question of the higher god. How does he get back to his own world? Grinning enigmatically, Zalama answers that normally, one cannot leave of their own volition, causing the Namekian hero to gasp as pure horror crosses his face at the thought that in his avarice for training, he's stranded himself when everyone needs him most. However, letting out a faint growl that shakes the very realm itself, Zalama reiterates that normally one cannot leave, though surely Piccolo has learned by now that true strength of will can overcome the mundanely mortal concept of possibility. And knowing exactly what his teacher is getting at for once, Piccolo thanks him sincerely as he stops overthinking and simply readies his ki and adopts his Kai stance. Returning to the battlefield, Goku and Vegeta have Moro backed into a corner, having destroyed his 2 auxiliary forehead crystals. Though like Moro did when he was winning, they spare him, despite the fact it will be child's play to end his evil life. Confused by this, Moro asks why they hold back, braying that surely they don't mean to give him back to those fools in the Galactic Patrol, do they? Though shaking his head, Goku replies that they're just waiting for his brother, since when Moro took Boo from Piccolo, he wrote the end of his own story. As if on cue, or perhaps very literally on cue considering the nature of Zalama, it is exactly at this moment that Piccolo materializes between the Saiyans, growling his agreement that it's time to end this once and for all. Showing off his own massive power boost thanks to his time in the Dragon's realm, Piccolo immediately rushes in, demonstrating greater ease and power with the Dragon Warrior form than ever before, as it surges onto him with little more fanfare than a spark of draconic energy, easily performing feats of skill that to one not familiar with the peculiar logic of Zalama would seem impossible, such as snagging Moro's gravity manipulation sorcery to create a trick room-like effect, or briefly coupling Kaioken on top of his godly form for extra power, which not only creates a bulking effect that gives him a stark resemblance to Porunga temporarily, but also creates a punch so strong that not only does the blow leave Moro's body distended around Piccolo's fist, but the shockwave of it is so substantial that it circles around the globe to strike the wizard a second time in the form of a Shinron made of compressed air. This gives him an idea based on Zalama's shapeshifting, and so he next pretends to be struck prone by a blow from Moro, only to unexpectedly sit up with a mouth blast to distract him when he tries to capitalize, so that when Moro regains sight of Piccolo, it is the terrifying visage of him having changed the shape of his Dragon Warrior state to embody Namek's dragon properly, including his sheer size and might, as now dwarfing the Goat Wizard. Piccolo cruelly punches him into the earth to immobilize him. This insignificant fraction is not the full extent of his power, however, as when he decides to simply end things rather than dragging out his retribution any further and attempts his Shadow Dragon technique, he finds not just Shinron manifesting at the end of his tail, but 7 dragons, which coupled with himself makes him an 8-headed, 8-tailed serpentine god, the likes of which no one has ever seen, as each now surround and stare down the pitiful wizard. As a result, when Moro is struck by an 8-fold Kami Senko and subsequently vanishes without a trace, there is no question in anyone's mind that he has been completely disintegrated. That is, until the very ground beneath him rumbles with the wizard's laughter. Looking down, the heroes are shocked to see that having been trapped in it, Moro has fused the very earth itself, as he proudly jeers that once again Piccolo's magic is the arc that sustains him. This is by consuming that arcane delicacy, he's been able to heal just enough from that blow Vegeta gave him to cast one final spell. Thus, Piccolo truly is the best assistant a magician could ask for. While it is a bitter pill to lose that young body he'd come to enjoy, it is worth it to learn the answer of the question of what the Namekian will do now. Will the Guardian destroy his own world just to defeat him, or will his hero's heart prove too weak, allowing himself to be destroyed? What's it going to be? Fury lacing every syllable, Piccolo declares that he chooses option 3. He's gonna blast the old goat with the strongest light of life yet. Then when he's back in that body he likes so much, he's gonna rip his soul right out of it and send him to hell. He then begins charging the attack, 7 beams forming on his tails, as he launches them right into Moro's giant face, only for them to dissipate, as a new face appears in Moro's soul-surviving head crystal, Piccolo's. Goofing with the force of an earthquake, Moro calls the stupendous. Now he has the very power of creation at his proverbial fingertips, a fact he is quick to demonstrate, as in a flash, a mountain-sized hand bursts from the ground, and clamps shut around Piccolo with such force and speed that gouts of purple blood burst like fountains from between his fingers, while an agonized scream is the only indication that the Namekian hero is still alive. However, it seems he will not be for much longer, as when Moro drops him, it is as a misshapen and broken mound of green flesh, still leaking fluids from countless wounds, while lacking even the strength to raise his head, whilst the creativity and willpower Zalama trained him to never part with, pleads with the dragons who've heeded his call to continue attacking Moro, even at the cost of his remaining life force, or even his eternal soul and the very memory of who he was if need be. It is a pitiful way to die, and as Piccolo stares at his own pooling blood, while a high-pitched whistle rings in his ears. He swears his vision must be going, as it almost looks like it's turning pink. Though as he blinks, the illusion does not go away, and as his eyes focus, it looks as though the pink liquid is congealing into a substance he knows all too well. Then, more masses of pink begin to fly off all his just as bewildered friends. Joining up with the central mass is a figure who can only be Majin Buu manifest before them, though this Buu is unlike any of the heroes they've ever seen before, as while he does resemble the more recent kid incarnation of the Jin, he is taller, more muscular, and possessing a larger head tentacle and a more similar aura to Piccolo's than ever. In a bewildered tone that is surprisingly strong despite his injuries, Piccolo demands to know what his student is doing here, a bit distrustful this isn't a hallucination before death claims him, with his new Buu answering in a rather deep voice that over time, he naturally left pieces of himself on everyone he loved, with Master Piccolo as his favorite getting the most pieces. They were certainly small and insignificant, but now that everyone he cares about is back together, enough pieces have reformed to revive him, letting out a pained cough. Piccolo praises that this is crafty, even for Buu, and seeing his mentor in pain, Buu promises to heal him up and stop the Goat Man just like he promised. But to do that, he'll have to sleep in his tummy for a little while, okay? Truthfully, Piccolo has no idea what this means, but figuring it's better than dying, and trusting Buu quite literally with his life, he accepts, relaxing and embracing the ridiculousness, as a mass of bubblegummy flesh wraps around and consumes him. At once, Buu acquires several of Piccolo's features, though that is not all he gets, as everyone senses Piccolo's newfound power plus more somehow radiating from Buu now. However, even with that, it is still questionable if Buu will be able to defeat this new planetary Moro, and so knowing he'll be no use in his current state, Gohan cries out for Buu to merge with him too. Like with Piccolo, this sees a substantial growth in power for Buu, with the rest of the heroes offering themselves up, since if their opponent has the power of assimilation and the Earth on his side, then they will give their champion the entire power of Earth's defenders. Even Vegeta and Goku allow themselves to become a part of Buu, with the pair bantering briefly over who will give the Jin the greater boost in strength. Though either way, when the Majin completes his task and prepares to face Moro, it is with power that will make even the mightiest god quake. As the lone spectators, Mirrors, having been joined by Whis and Beerus to enjoy the show up close, briefly wonders if even his father could compete with this amalgamation, though hopefully they will never have to find out, as currently Buu is doing the exact opposite of what he was created for, protecting the universe, and has eyes only for Moro. By now, the wizard has eschewed all quips and barbs, though whether it is out of fear or desire for the key he senses before him is unknown. Either way, he manifests 1,000 arms to crush his foe, though even this is not enough, as with a whisper, Buu atomizes them, before rushing in with a new concept of speed, his fist raised. All it takes is a single punch to destroy the monstrosity Moro has become, using a mix of magic, Majin power, spirit control, as well as creation and destruction energy to separate him from the earth without harming it, reform him into his mortal state, and then destroying that form in such a way that even a dragon's wish could never restore him. However, this is not the only application of these powers that Buu displays, as once it becomes obvious that Moro is gone, all those the heroic Jin absorbed begin appearing beside him, hale and healthy, while he slowly reverts to the childish state that has become his base form. Rubbing his head, Goku loudly asks what happened and where Moro is, since the last thing he remembers is Buu being revived looking kinda weird, with Krillin and Goten echoing this. Having no issues with his memory, Piccolo goes to fill them in, though when he catches Kid Buu's eye, the Jin raises a finger to his lips, causing Namekian to fall silent in respect for his wishes, as he simply states that Moro is gone for good, and that's all that matters. Now that the battle is done, all that is left is to restore Namekian planet Vampa, and everyone killed by Moro and the escaped prisoners, with Gohan heading up the charge as he knows where Piccolo had left the Dragon Balls, so it should be easy to fly there and make the wish. Though Piccolo warns him to word it carefully, since he's pretty sure they'll turn to dust after this, and he doesn't think he or Buu have it in him right now to make another set. Nodding that they'll be careful, Gohan and the other Z fighters then take off, with this just leaving Piccolo and Buu, the latter of whom looks to his master and in a quiet voice asks if he did good. Smiling in his gruff manner, Piccolo replies that he did great, proving himself a true guardian today, and for that, he is very proud of Buu. What's more, he's immensely happy that he didn't lose his disciple. He then offers the pink Jin his hand to shake, not as his teacher or as Kami to a subject, but instead as an equal, and being wise enough from all he's experienced to recognize what this means, Buu's face splits into a wide grin as he clasps the offered palm, ready to leave their old roles behind and embrace this new path they will walk together as comrades, as father and son.